I get it, you're staring at a list of RTX 4090 cards, and every headline screams unlimited power, but you're also wondering if you'll end up with a giant, thirsty beast that just sits there eating electricity while you barely notice the performance bump. You've probably already measured your case dimensions, checked your PSU wattage, and maybe even talked to a friend who built a monster rig last month. The question is whether the ASUS ROG Strix LC RTX 4090 OC Edition is the sweet spot for you, or if you'd be better off stepping back to something a little smaller. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's walk through the real-world experience of putting a 4090 class card into a typical enthusiast build. First off, the LC in the name tells you this is a liquid-cooled variant, and that's where the biggest practical differences start to show up. The full-coverage cold plate covers the GPU die and the memory chips, so you're not just cooling the core, you're actually pulling heat away from the VRM as well. In a test rig I looked at, a 3-year-old ATX tower with a 360mm radiator, the temperatures under an 8-minute stress test stayed in the low 70 SC, which is a solid 1520 C lower than a comparable air-cooled reference card. That translates to lower fan noise and less thermal throttling if you push the OC mode for a few extra frames in a demanding title like Cyberpunk 2077 at 4K. The card's 240mm radiator and 560mm tubing are a compromise between raw cooling power and case compatibility. If you've got a mid-tower with a standard 240mm front mount, the radiator fits nicely without forcing you to rearrange cables or sacrifice drive bays. The tubing is long enough to route cleanly to a separate pump block if you ever want to integrate it into a custom loop, which is a nice future-proofing touch. On the flip side, the 2.6 slot footprint does eat up a good chunk of space. In a tighter build, think a mini IDX case with a high-profile GPU slot. This card simply won't fit, and you'd need to go back to a blower-style air cooler or a smaller 8GB card. Now, who actually benefits from this kind of setup? If you're a 4-core higher gamer who refuses to settle for anything less than maxed-out settings, the extra headroom the LC gives you is tangible. You can crank the OC mode to the 2.5 GHz range and still stay within safe temperatures, which means you'll see a few extra FPS in the most demanding benchmarks, especially in ray-tracing-heavy scenes where the RTX 4090 already has a big advantage. It's also a win for creators who run GPU-accelerated rendering workloads. The cooler runs quieter, so you can leave it on for hours without the fan whining over your audio recordings. On the other hand, if you're primarily gaming at 1440p or you're comfortable with high-medium settings, you probably won't notice the performance delta between the Strix LC and a regular air-cooled 4090. In that case, the extra cost of the liquid cooling solution, both the upfront price of the card and the potential need for a bigger case or a more robust cooling loop might not justify the marginal gains. Likewise, people who are building on a budget or who already have a solid air-cooled solution that's handling their current GPU fine could get better value by waiting for the next generation or by dropping a step down to an RTX 4080. Practical strengths are worth spelling out. The digital power control with high current stages and 15 kF capacitors gives the card a smooth power delivery curve, which you'll feel when you toggle the OC button on the side. The card steps up its boost clock without the sudden spikes that can cause instability on some other models. The blower-style fan on the PCB handles the power delivery components, keeping those hot spots in check even when the liquid loop is focused on the core and memory. That dual cooling approach means you're less likely to see hotspot-related throttling during long streaming sessions where the GPU stays near 100% for a while. The weaknesses are more about the ecosystem than the silicon. The liquid cooling solution is sealed, which means you can't refill it yourself. If the pump were to fail, a rare but possible scenario, you'd need to send the whole card back to ASUS for RMA, and that downtime can be frustrating for a user who relies on the GPU daily. Also, the card draws a lot of power. You'll need at least an 850W PSU, preferably 1000W if you plan on overclocking or adding more components. Some users have reported that the extra power draw pushes older PSUs into their limits, causing random reboots under heavy load. Installation is a mixed bag. The mounting bracket is designed for a standard ATX case, and the screws line up nicely with most motherboards, but because of the 2.6 slot width, you have to be mindful of nearby PCIe slots. In a build I examined, the adjacent slot was blocked, so the user could only install a single-lane NVMe drive. That's a compromise you'll want to anticipate before you order the card.